Go ahead and record.
All right, we can all approve that we know we're being recorded. Welcome back to the March, how did we get here so quick, edition of Drinks Professionals Network. I thought I woke up this morning, I said, wait, didn't we just do this? But it has been a month. So welcome, everyone. We've got many, most, except for Mark, most returning attendees. So that's great. So we can kind of pick up from there, I guess. Why don't we do this? I think we have Jess jumping in from Breckenridge. And she's got the snow hat on too. Perfect.
I'm in my pajamas and working from home today, so no judgment, please.
That's, how many feet of snow are on the ground there?
Oh, not enough. Not like Tahoe.
No,
They got
not
like
like
5
Tahoe.
or 6 feet. We got a dusting.
My brother was skiing this week in Tahoe, and he sent pictures on Tuesday when the slopes were closed. They spent 2 hours trying to dig out the hot tub at the place they were renting. And when they finally did, the snow mounds were like 6 feet high, and they were sitting in the steam thing, and there was snow. It was,
Oh my gosh.
very
Yeah,
cool.
it's pretty crazy what they're experiencing. I wish it was here too, but it's not.
Yeah. So let's pick up where we started, and let's welcome Mark, who's with Bump Williams Consulting, who's Bump's been on a couple of these and has been real helpful in sharing data, trends, data, and we've talked about this over the past couple of months. There's really been this the beer distribution business and the spirits distribution business is really being squished together, in the sense that you've got all these brands who are co-branding their RTDs, and they're going right in, along with the beer, I guess, which in a sense, I should ask Mark, talk about that trend and, what your view is of what's happening right now.
Okay. I prepared some remarks, so let me go down.
Prepared remarks.
Oh yeah, of course.
You need a teleprompter?
Yeah, no. I'm just going to run down through some of this, but you're right. I mean, there's an old what's the Bill Murray or where he says cats and dogs playing together. That's kind of what we've got going on in the industry right now. Who'd have thought that soda, would be entering the category, Coke and Pepsi and Mountain Dew and those sort of things. It's like you said, it's really blurring the lines, but run down through a few of these things and maybe I'll hit on a couple of those points. For beer, per capita consumption is down. People are basically buying, obviously less volume, and their purchase frequency is down as well. People that used to buy beer twice a week are buying it once a week now. So we see a big drop in that. Consumption for total bev alcohol is flat, but we think spirits, as you mentioned there, is the saving grace. It's sort of lifting all boats. Consumers are buying less beer due to price. And our consumer is buying 19.2 ounce cans. They're buying single serves. That whole category has made a significant jump. We think on-premise is going to be slow to come back. We see, the economic woes, loss of draft handles, increased cost in draft beer no longer makes it a bargain to buy. So that on-premise category for us is going to struggle to get back to where it was pre-pandemic. This kind of talks about the RTDs. Shelf space for beer is going to be reduced. So if you're a beer distributor, we're going to see some of that space going to these RTDs, across all points of distribution. And the spirits-based RTDs in particular that space is going to come from beer. Now, the retailers, they went way overboard with hard seltzers. That's the thing we saw biggest from a set standpoint with the retailers the last year is everybody jumped into that hard seltzer category. They overcommitted space. So we're working with a lot of retailers right now trying to help them sort out how do we get back to getting products in there that my consumer may get some loyalty. And speaking of loyalty, there is very little loyalty across any of these categories, Mike. They don't, there's not a true winner when it comes to the RTD category or even the seltzer category. Of course, White Claw and Truly have led that category for a while, but most of the new
High Noon, which has just announced a bunch of additional flavors and tequila based
yes,
beverages.
yes. And what we're seeing there, to get off script, what we're seeing there is what retailers want more incremental business. So if you bring me more flavors and it just replaces what I had, that doesn't do me a whole lot of good. I want flavors that are going to help, or incremental brands that are going to help me put more through my register. So I want to take and build more out of that category with those flavors. We're seeing a lot of retailers that have put the full array of flavors in for every one of those. And now they're trying to figure out, where do I get more space, to bring in the hot ones. So that we're working with several retailers right now and trying to figure out the best use of their shelf space. And they want to drive more business through the brands that they have, and not have to pick up and replace a brand, if you will. Great point. Excellent point. Beer drinkers of yesterday are still loyal to beer, but again, that behavior is stagnant. They're not buying as much. The drinkers of tomorrow are flocking to those RTDs, and they're going in there for that first drinking experience. They are looking for variety, which you mentioned, but the problem is that retailer just can't jam too many flavors in there, so they're going to again try to stick with ones that work for them. I think we just did a survey, and I'm looking at about 33,000 SKUs in that category alone. So, if I'm a retailer and I'm trying to figure out, which ones I put on my shelf, and, maybe I don't have 160 feet of cooler space. Maybe I only have 100, which are going to be my top brands to go in there. That's the big challenge right now.
So it sounds like one thing you said pretty firmly is that people don't have the brand loyalty that they used to. So it would seem to me that this means that the brands that do have top of mind presence, the bigger brands, the first to markets, are going to be able to dominate, because it sounds like some of the other, smaller brands, lesser known brands, they're not going to get a chance because they're going to be squeezed out, right? If you've got High Noon adding flavors, and that's a brand that does resonate, they're going to make room for those flavors at the expense of somebody else. Would be my.
That's exactly correct. Yep. And what we're seeing is the big players, the national players, are gaining more of that consumer purchase, as opposed to some of the locals. Some of the local RTD drinks are struggling to get out of the box because they haven't. They're a little bit behind. We did this study. We checked with about 10,000 consumers, and here's just some comments. And this might throw a little bit on the enlightenment here. I can't afford to drink as much beer as I used to. Most of our consumers that drink beer are saying, I just can't afford it. That's why we're seeing, believe it or not, below premium brands are starting to inch their way up, and they were one of the few categories that showed an increase in. I got my chart here in 2022. Craft beer was down, domestics were down, but below premium was one of the categories that was up. This is another one. My friends and I don't go out as much. It's too expensive. I'm buying those single serve cans of beer because it's a better deal. I stopped drinking beer and switched over to High Noon a long time ago. That's to your point. People are coming out of that category because they want to try new things. My girlfriends and I stopped drinking beer. We like those canned mixed drinks. So we found a lot of consumers, and particularly in the female category, that wanted to switch to the mixed drink category. Oh, here's a good one. I really care about my health, so I drink non-alcohol beer now. In that category, I don't have to tell you, I think, well, let's see, up 21% for 22, that non-alcohol category. And I used to buy beer a few times a week. Now I only buy it on Thursday night. That goes back to my point about the frequency of purchases, and that sort of thing. So those were some comments, that came to us through that survey. But I think you hit it on the head. It's going to be, which ones can get some retail space on the shelves. That RTD category is going to continue to grow. We're going to see space come from craft beer. We're going to see space come from seltzers. The winners in the beer category right now are Mexican lagers. So those brands are on the up. And besides Michelob Ultra, which is really showing nice increases, it's going to be some of those below premium category price beers, with where our inflation is right now.
Very interesting. Appreciate the deep share on that. Anyone have any questions or thoughts or corresponding data points? I know Carrie, in wine categories, you've been talking about changes there. Is that still?
Yeah, I mean, all of what you're saying, I know you didn't do the research to compare wine, but it's all the things that you just said are also eating into that category. Particularly the high noons and the seltzers in the female demographics, because people are looking for less calories. The cans are convenient. Just there's a laundry list of reasons why rosé and white wine drinkers are going more towards those seltzers.
I have
We
a
just
quick
picked up,
question.
we just picked up a seltzer
There you go.
for California.
What is it called?
LFG seltzers. Let's effing go is the brand.
Oh boy, okay.
Yeah,
I bet you will.
yeah.
I love it.
So it's two flavors, Midnight Shirley and Menage Orange. We've
Is
had
it
it for
agave or tequila or what is it?
no, it's a malt based. It's a malt
Oh.
based. Yeah, 8% alcohol. Interesting. We had it for about a month, so we'll see.
Well, they should be putting some tequila in that.
I couldn't see the size of the can. What is it? 8 ounce, 12 ounce? Like,
Can is
16.
can. I think it's a 16 ounce.
Yeah,
Looks like 16.
Yeah, it's probably a 16 ounce. I have no idea. My son is the one that does our beer and wine and stuff section. I just sticks to the spirits. Yeah, it's probably 16 ounce.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. This is popular with college kids. So we're doing stuff near
but was it
USC,
LFJ or
yeah.
LFG?
G.
LFG.
Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go. Right.
Yeah, but it looked like a J on the can. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, it's a G. Looks like a J. You got to get the whole thing. Anyway, so we just jumped into that category, and some retailers do tell us that we're a little bit late here in California.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I was jumping to is what we were referencing. It really is kind of the malt based is not where the growth has been. It's in the spirits based.
Right. We've got with one of our other brands, we're working on sourcing bulk tequila, but they want to be able to put the CRT on the nom on the can. So we're certifying the bottling plant here in California with the CRT. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through, and they're going to they are going to be doing a tequila based cocktail, margarita.
Yeah,
but it's taking us a while.
I think that still seems, from everything I see, it's the tequila is driving that category in the cocktail space. Any other comments on this topic of seltzers and the beer and spirits?
So I will say this, for us at Doan Distillery, We
Mhm.
have a product. It's not a seltzer. We found that we have a lot of people, who, at least in our area, who don't like the carbonation. So we do a vodka water juice cocktail in a can, low ABV. We can't keep it on the shelves. We have 5 flavors of it, and it just flies. And it is so popular with the younger crowd, the women who don't want to feel bloated, so they don't want to drink the beer and the seltzer. And it has just taken off.
Mm, that sounds great. Good for you. When did you launch that?
So we launched that. We launched our first flavor in like July of last year, and we now have 5 flavors. This year we'll probably have an additional 2 more. We're working on them all the time, but like I said, we have people. Pennsylvania's rules are a little stricter than a lot of states, so we are governed by the LCB. We can only sell in fine wine and good spirit shops as well as our locations. But, we have people that drive from other states to come get them because they just love them. And there's not a whole lot of that out there. You find the carbonation, but nobody's just doing a cocktail that's a vodka, water, fruit juice.
Mhm. Well, good for you guys. Yeah, we've talked about this in previous episodes that that pure cocktail in the can, the pure RTD, the full proof. I think there's still a lot of room for growth there, and it's amazing to me that there's not more of that out there now, as opposed to the seltzer based, but for the reasons you just mentioned. Anyway, so any other thoughts on this? What's Breckenridge? Are you doing any RTDs?
Well, I can't say.
Could be competitive. It would be some competitive information.
Don't ask me about that
Um,
either, because I've been
I
talking.
will say, what was that, Steve?
Don't ask me, because I've talked to your guys about all kinds of
Just
stuff.
stay
related.
on mute, my friend. I will say it is on our radar for sure. And it's, something that we've wanted to do for a very long time. We just never had the ability to do it on our site. We don't have the room. We didn't have the canning line or anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely on our minds right now.
Can I make a comment on the category?
Are you allowed to comment?
It's
As
more
far as I'm
generic.
concerned, you can.
It's more generic, but I've talked to probably 30 manufacturers around the country about the same issue. Breckenridge is one of them. And that is that at many states, the excise tax on distilled spirits-based RTDs are out of line with are very skewed compared to beer or wine, much more so than the national level. Colorado was particularly problematic because here our RTD rate for spirits produced is the same as our rate for our bottles, which means it's 60.21 cents per beverage liter, regardless of the alcohol volume, where our competition is, a 1/6 to 1/4 of that. And so it makes it incredibly non-competitive because of what we're paying the state to be able to successfully launch here in our home market RTDs. At least 14 other states have similar issues. And I say that because I'm on the Discus Craft Advisory Board, and it's a topic of much discussion there as well. The Colorado governor has enacted a liquor advisory working group, which I sit on, and we're looking at changes to Colorado law. And one of the things we are discussing is a separate excise tax rate solely for RTDs, regardless of the type of manufacturing license a person holds. Because I can make the same RTD in a winery, a brewery, and a distillery using the exact same process, sell it using my license versus their licenses, and I pay quite a lot more tax because my license is a distilled spirits manufacturing license. So that is the problem with the RTD category across the US. is the inequality based upon the base alcohol category that tax is assessed with.
Is that a factor in why so many brewers first got into it?
So if I were to get a separate brewery manufacturing license in a different facility and just set up a canning line, I could sell spirit from myself to myself in the new facility. And if I had the volume, I could probably pay for the facility just by this excise tax savings.
Mm. Mhm.
Absolutely. At
Yeah,
the both the state and federal level, but here in Colorado and a number of states, it's much more problematic at the state level.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because I hadn't really focused on that issue, but it was always obvious that why are the the distillers, I mean, the brewers so far ahead on this category?
Because they pay a quarter to an eighth the tax of the rest of us.
Yeah. And so it's not just as simple as they already have canning lines.
No,
Oh, I think
no.
like in in Montana, it's the taxing situation, then on top of it, the route, the route to distribution. If we look in the control state, we're limited to liquor stores, which in Montana, very few of them have excess space for any cooler space. The white wine's probably taking most of that. So between the taxes and that, it just simply made 0 sense. We're doing the same thing in Montana. It's starting to come around where the laws are going to change and hopefully allow us to sell in grocery, and it changing the tax rate as well. But I think that's what happened. I know up here is just wasn't feasible for distillers.
One thing I would piggyback on that in Montana, though, is many of my stores, the liquor stores, like Lolo is a great example. They are remodeling to be able to have more RTDs. They're making space because they see it's such a big category. But you're right, we can't sell in grocery if it's spirit based. So it has to be in the liquor stores themselves, which in Montana causes problems. But 2 of my biggest products are RTDs, and it's very difficult to keep them even in stock because of that fact. But the distribution, because they have to be in liquor stores here, is more difficult.
And I think Lolo, there's a couple of the bigger ones that are. I think we've just got a lot of the small ones still that are just like, we don't have any more space.
Yeah, and Town Pump has made a ton of space in all their stores.
Yeah, that's been great.
So
Wendy, are you doing any RTDs? No. Not agave based or anything. No. So what's new in the world of Ryan Donatelli? What's new in your world? Well, I just made a segue there.
Hello, Mark, by the way.
How are you?
I haven't seen you in forever. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
We're great. We're just launching. We're working with a large group here that manages all the casino properties nationwide. So it's every supplier that participates on casino properties. So we're preparing for March Madness in our big year, and then helping our clients evolve using accurate data. That's our big push this year. I feel like a lot of brands don't necessarily know what to do with the data that comes from the field.
Mhm.
So we're really trying to create the story for them that tells them the truth versus maybe the data that they purchased or acquired. Because when you think about your avatar, you can create your avatar so early in the game, and it doesn't necessarily become the actual avatar. So your target consumer can change. And I think White Claw is a phenomenal example of that. White Claw, I think, went so wide that when they came out of the gate, their target demographic was not what it is today. So that's where data tells the accurate story.
So what are the data points, the consumer shifts that you're seeing for some of these brands?
Well, what we're trying to capture is the competition as well. And in most recapping, your competitive isn't there, your competition. So we're not looking at why the promotion wasn't as successful as it could have been. And we're looking at inventory levels. We're looking at other things that aren't in typical recapping to explain to brand, they could be in the wrong account because they went with, what they thought was right. And I think a lot of the data is outdated. I think post-COVID things are different. So we're gathering a different, we've tweaked our recapping And we've looked at a lot of these recapping platforms and they're kind of missing the mark in that space as well. So, you know, your packaging matters. Everybody on this call knows this, but brand doesn't necessarily always look at this, but the packaging matters. If you're in a draft account and you're sampling and trying to push a 24-ounce can, you know, it could be as simple as the packaging. It could be as simple as the time frame that you're there. But a lot of people book promotions based off a high volume time versus foot traffic. So fine dining might be, you know, your dinner space might be your highest ring, but it's not necessarily your largest foot traffic. So really trying to hone in on what's working and what's not working, and then get back with our clients on the actual story.
So how, I don't make, you need to go too deep in this, but when you're collecting data from
Mhm.
these events, how are you doing it? Are you surveying people? Are you just making, you're just pulling sales?
We
Data?
have many ways. So we have a very lengthy recap that comes from the team. We also have culture spotters in markets that give us data as well, that know the space. So they know San Francisco like the back of their hand. They know the underground, you know, they know all of the trendy things. They know everything. So if it's a mezcal, for instance, they would know exactly where to go to put a mezcal, and comparing that to what brand is wanting. We also, like I talked about last week, we've got our boxes, our traffic analytic boxes, and our beacons and all of those other things. So we're compiling it from, you know, several resources, plus the team that's out there doing the events and activations, and what brand has provided. So what we're seeing in promotions is the goal isn't set first and foremost of the outcome, you know, the desired outcome, and what brand feels is a successful promotion. You know, a lot of people can look at sales, some look at just brand awareness. I've had a client tell me, Ryan, we just want you to go out and sample product. Like, they don't want to hear about anything else that we have to offer, and they don't want us to do it anymore. But yet they're comparing us to another agency, and our inventory levels are 1/8 of what the other agency is getting in Florida. So they're not looking at, you know, selling out 100% is a great number. Selling 3 bottles is a terrible number. But when you're selling the 3 that they had, you know, what else can you do? And at that point, it's a logistics issue. So trying to get everyone to work together and run promotions, almost like Airbnb is done. Airbnb has a lot of respect. Everyone's working together. They're all trying to accomplish a happy outcome, you know? So anytime there's something needed, like, oh, I can't get hot water, the owner is instantly trying to help them get hot water. If promotions could work this way, where we're all on the same team, that would be great. And in 20 years of doing this,
It's not happening. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. What
yes,
about?
I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. It would just be
No, I know.
great. We could all be working to accomplish something and have respect for each other.
That's interesting. I mean, it's, you know, I think we've all who've been in this space have realized there's so much more information out there. Why aren't they paying attention to it? But that's, we
In
can't.
the past, even with text to win campaigns, brand does not buy the data. I don't know why they wouldn't want to know about their new 472 Pacifico fans in Columbus, Ohio. So they could
reach them. Yeah.
So they could retarget them, stay in front of them, you know, at least be in front of them on social, bare minimum, or matching that audience, right? But I really feel that they don't know what to do. So getting them to understand how they can utilize this data is so valuable.
Is it the bigger brands that, I mean, is there a, you know, because it's often, I always feel like the smaller brands or the are more entrepreneurial and are more trying to figure out ways to educate, and the bigger brands often are just, this is how we do it.
You know, I think it's both. I think part of it's ego based, that, you know, the agency would not ever educate us. We, you know, we have large degrees and, you know, all these things, and we bought this data from Nielsen or whatever they did to compile their data. It can't be wrong, right? And what do promo models know?
Right.
So creating this
You're right.
upper
They're not
certified.
expecting it. Yeah.
creating this upper echelon of certified brand ambassadors, introducing certified brand ambassadors and team leads. You know, maybe when we create these levels and we have this education, there will be more respect for the feedback. I don't know. We're going to keep trying. So we'll keep trying. And if the clients say we just want samples, that's what we'll give them as samples. But there's just so much more that could be done, especially when you have a QR code that takes you on a distillery tour and you have social media. Why not help you gain traffic to stay in front of them?
Well, Brian Montalone from a Drinkubator. You guys are in that similar space, no?
We spoke last week. Yes, we're going to try to figure out if there's any ways to work together for sure. Yes.
Yeah, hey, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, everything Ryan
Brian.
said. Hey, what's up? How are you? Yeah, I'm sitting here nodding my head as Ryan's talking about the data and the analytics and the learnings that are available to brands. And a lot of brands, like I agree with Ryan, I think it's almost like analysis paralysis, where they don't know what to do with it. They know that it's valuable, but they don't understand how to monetize it across channel. They don't understand how the learnings you're getting from Ryan can speak to the learnings that you're getting from your D2C efforts, which also can cross-pollinate with what you're seeing at the distillery. And putting all of those pieces together it's taxing. It's a big job, but that's why there's, folks that eat data and live data and love data. So yeah, I think it's interesting. The other thing I wanted to mention, just on the RTD tip is, we work with a bunch of RTDs, and the one thing that, and this is more of just like a hypothetical, but like the category is insane. But I always think about, because every single one of the brands that we work with at the D2C level, shipping's a big issue. Buying 4 cans and then paying $16 to have 4 cans shipped is a lot different than buying a 750 milliliter bottle that is going to last you for a month, 2 months, whatever it is, and paying oftentimes less for shipping. And I always wonder, like, if the brands that are getting into the space, the smaller, artisan RTD brands, or the Breckenridges who are thinking about doing it, could figure out, like, how do you do that? That category would be even just ridiculous. Like if it was affordable to ship RTDs, and talking specifically on D2C side, it would be unbelievably.
You don't think Amazon figure that out?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a crazy category. I mean, all of our brands have the same trouble. It's all pull strategy, right? It's brand awareness, which every brand needs to do all the time. But it's, how do I move this off the shelf? Because, it's so competitive. They're going to give me a limited time. If I don't move, I'm done. And the problem is, and what we've seen, what the data tells us, is that repurchase and loyalty is just so difficult in this category. Unless you have a really honed in community. I think community is big with any brand, especially in this industry, but particularly for RTDs. Like, you look at like a Passion Tree, they've got crazy community, and they built it, if you know the story, they were in an RV traveling across the country, and people just gravitated to that and they stuck with them. But yeah, it's like, this weekend I'm going to try this RTD, this weekend I'm going to try this one, and then next week I'm going to try something else, because there's so many options. So it was interesting to hear the conversation about grocery and which ones do they take on, which ones do they put on their shelf. I would not want to have to figure that out, but for the brand itself, it's a big challenge. And if so we always go back to brand building and community to get that loyalty, but the loyalty piece is really tough in that category.
I wanted to jump in quickly, with what both of you guys were saying about the data. The distillery is highly distributed, and we're a fairly big company at this point in time. Hey, Henry, can you give Mama 1 second? And we're struggling with how to use the data, honestly. It's me and a social media coordinator, and that's it as far as our marketing team goes. And the data is there, and it's just so insane what it can do to move the needle. But finding the time to use it and then implement it and then analyze it and then start all over. It's super intense. And we have an agency now, which is awesome, but man, it is a huge world to tackle with how to use it all. So I feel that right now, like.
Yeah,
we're
I
in the
mean, and
middle
you're
of it.
getting, and you're probably, it's coming from all kinds of directions, because you're getting your all your social media analytics and understanding what's bullshit and what's meaningful, and what can you do with it. You know, and then if you're going to be getting data from the field, right, how does that map to, you know, a social campaign, or how does it map to, you know, consumers, you know, a persona, overall persona to develop, you know, as
Well,
well as
and
avatar. But, you know, it's all about who's, you know, who's the persona of your customer. And if that keeps changing from different sources, it can be pretty hard to, you know, to stick with it.
yeah, and with us having a restaurant and a retail shop attached to our distillery, you know, we see 300 to 400,000 people through our door a year between our two locations. And we've never really had a system to gather data. Like, what the hell, right? Like, we totally have been missing out all these years. And so we started to do it now. But then how do we take all of that and then, you know, build out the strategy that makes the most sense? Ryan, I see you. And, you know, and to that, like, we use MailChimp, and it's very basic. We send one email to every single person on our list once a week. And so we're moving to maybe something like Klaviyo. And if you guys have an opinion about that, but how we can, Amanda says nope. But somebody that can allow us to like segment audiences better, send a more targeted message based on, like, we don't need to send our new whiskey release to people who have only bought vodka for the past 5 years from us, you know, just making sure that we're a little bit more mindful of who our audience is and their purchase patterns and where they live and availability. And starting to send like text messages and stuff. It seems like we're like just now getting into the marketing scene as far as analytics go with the size of our business. Like, it's wild. And we just never had the resources, the ability, the time to really efficiently dive into all of that. So
Yeah,
I don't
see,
know.
I think too, it's, you know, what do you want the data for? You know, do you want it to open new states? Do you want it to, you know, expand, you know, into a new restaurant? You know, I think what we're seeing is, you know, it used to be, I want the data just so I can grow my business. And now it's in what form do I grow my business? You know,
Yeah.
how do I move that? Is it opening new states or whatever? So we're doing a lot of real specific data, you know, whether it's statewide, even geographic within a local community. You know, the data is there. You just got to drill down into it and then figure out, you know, what's my purpose in trying to figure out what's next. So it's a data world. Trust me. You can't walk in and say this brand's on fire anymore. You know, it just doesn't work.
Mark, I missed the beginning and I didn't get a chance to read the attendee sheet. So where do you live? And yeah, obviously you're in the beer business.
I work for Bump Williams, so we're a consultant for all kinds of wholesalers, suppliers. We deal in the company was started in beer and craft beer. Bump worked for a lot of the major brewers, you know, when he first started. But now we do all kinds of industries. I got a client. I got a question for you, actually. Don't let me forget. I've got a wine client here in Ohio that I work with, and so yeah, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Our stuff is national, even international, and I think my comment about the data was really truly, what do you want it for? You know, is it for, you know, incremental brand growth? Is it for innovation? Is it for, you know, opening into a new state? Is it comparing me to, you know, just, you know, other segments of beer or wine? Or, you know, the comment you made was really good, that the RTDs have not impacted the wine and spirits business as much as they have the beer business. And it was kind of funny because, like Michael said, a lot of the brewers got into the business with RTDs as, you know, malt based, and it actually hurt the craft business more than probably any other category. So
You might have misunderstood my comment then, because the RTDs are eating into the wine business.
Oh, yes, they are, but not as much from what we see, but not as much as they're eating into the craft
Okay.
beer. But
I'm
that
sure
was my,
that is
yeah,
true. I don't look at that, but yes,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's eating
not as,
into everybody's business.
oh, yeah, oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. My question for you is, we're seeing a lot of, growth in the below premium category of beers. So a lot of the, a brand like Busch Light is really showing some really nice growth. So in the wine category, is that the same? Do you see that same thing happening in the wine category, that below premium priced wines are beginning to, shoot? I'm starting to see a little bit of it with the
Yeah,
data
I
that
mean,
have.
I think that's been going on for a while, but it's almost weird because it's cyclical, because you would think people were trying to save money during COVID, but trends were showing that people were spending more on a bottle of wine because they were drinking it at home and not so much out in a restaurant. And now I see it going backwards, and I do not have any in my portfolio, but I do see people who, I hate to use the word wine snob, but people who it was absolutely going to be beneath them to ever drink wine out of a box that actually will do it now. I'm not talking about like Franzi or Almaden 5 liters, but there are some premium 3-liter brands now that are way more acceptable than it used to be to drink out of a box. So I think that is a category that, with every time we turn on the news, we're seeing eggs going up, bread's going up, milk's going up, produce is going up, everything's going up. I do think people are trying to save ways to save money. And I do see people who absolutely would say out there, I'll never drink wine out of a box. I've seen them do it. I've even seen them in restaurants.
Yeah. So,
Like some people, that is a by the glass pour. And I'm not talking about, Chuck E. Cheese. I'm talking about there's actually a chain based out of South Carolina that does it.
yeah. So
Box is like a house wine for them.
is your on-premise business coming back then?
Yeah, I don't think New York will ever come back to what it was, unfortunately. But yes, I think things are making a slow comeback. But I do see people are not changing wine lists as often, just kind of sticking with the basics. Food portions are going down. Most people are trying to stay with quality, but I think people are cutting corners everywhere.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
I've been reading a lot about the cities like Manhattan and Boston, where in the city core, where there's not as much housing, and people haven't come back to the offices, but yet right outside, 2 miles away, in the so-called neighborhoods, things are just booming in the restaurant and bar business.
Brooklyn's booming. I mean, things are booming.
Yeah. Because I've been reading a lot, I still read the Boston Globe because I'm from there. And they've been doing a ton of articles about what's it going to take for people to come back to downtown, which, the financial district, which is still, restaurants don't have lunch, can't even support lunch service.
Yeah.
Because nobody's there, but yet they go, you go 2 tea stops away, and, people are lined up to get into the, the local restaurant.
I mean, the whole work part is interesting because I think companies finally realized, why are we paying for these expenses on office, just the buildings, the electricity, the equipment, like all of it alone, when a lot of people are perfectly capable of not doing that. And then you have the other side to it where it's like, okay, well, we're going to let people come in just 2 days a week or maybe 3 days a week, but you still have to then keep a functioning office building. So I don't know, but the restaurants are affected by that, because if you do only have somebody walking by your restaurant 2 times a week, how likely are they to going to stop in there? I don't.
I should probably ask
cyclical.
Stephanie this question, because Stephanie, her real job is being the general manager of Real Professionals Network, which is commercial real estate.
Right.
Is there any relevant observations or shares?
Yeah, so we're never going to see everyone go back. Even before COVID, a lot of large corporations were assessing what is the utilization of space truly. That's why people started to not have their own private dedicated office. So even before all of this happened, people weren't using the space. And so to Carrie's point, if you're only going to have people in the office 2 days a week and you're going to mandate them to be in the office 2 days a week, the other thing that's happening is that there's a war for talent. And those that are not going to be making those excessive demands on where you will work and when you will be in will be the ones of, solid talent. There is a big conversation, obviously, about how do companies train new people, bringing up younger people. How do you, instill the culture? How do you, train, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a big conversation that there will be 1 billion square feet of office space that becomes obsolete. And the really interesting conversation about that, not so much yet for the newer buildings, but for older office buildings, there's a lot of conversion to multifamily. So in the inner core. So there is some positive that could come from that, but 1 billion square feet of office space, that's a gigantic number to say the very, very least. So yeah, it's interesting. Definitely.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I'm right here in Midtown Atlanta where there's still a ton of construction going on, although, and there've been several, as you know, new office buildings, like the new Google building, Sealy built huge. But then most of the construction is on housing, is, big apartment buildings.
Yeah, just as another comment.
In this block that are happening, one right next door, they're going to get rid of the view. It's going
Yeah,
up.
in some of the Manhattan, Chicago, the newer buildings that are coming online or are still being built, those are getting traction because what is happening is larger corporations, big law firms, et cetera, are saying, well, it's easier for us to go and build out space that is going to be appropriately sized and flexible and has those communal areas that we didn't build 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It just makes it easier. So it's, the fact that there's still construction, it's happening. But it is because corporations are moving and they're reevaluating their footprint and what that looks like inside, not just private offices, et cetera. So it's interesting.
All right, well, back to the spirits business.
Yes, please.
Anyone have anything, any topics they want to throw out for discussion among the group? I don't think we've heard from everybody here yet, so anyone feel free to wave or just jump in. Yes, Carrie's back.
I know I spoke already, but I do have something interesting because it was a big topic last time. I don't know if it was last month or the month before, but we all know it's a thing. The low alcohol and no alcohol categories, we all talked about it. Some of you have tasting rooms and you're making all these no alcohol cocktails. Well, I have noticed, and because people have asked me if I know anyone interested in jobs, a lot of these distributors are now putting entire teams together that will only be selling low and no alcohol items, which is kind of not ever been heard of before. I mean, there's been like brands trickling in and out, and people have maybe done cocktails on site in their restaurant or on their properties or tasting rooms or whatever, but they are literally building sales forces now in these major wholesalers that will only be selling low and no alcoholic beverages. That shows you how strong the category is.
That they can justify that.
That they would invest in, putting teams together, that is their mission. And I'm sure once it's approved in all these states, that the cannabis infused things will fall into those.
I was gonna say,
divisions.
it's a great addition for all the dispensaries.
It's a segue to the, I'm sure, I mean, I've not seen that in writing, but I'm sure that's why it's going now, because I'm quite certain that the cannabis drinks will probably fall into those divisions. But it's just like, whether you want to call it a wake-up call or reality, it is what it is type of thing, but it's real. And the fact that major, wholesalers across the country are creating like designated divisions like this goes to show you that it's for the long haul.
I've been actually surprised that there hasn't been more of the cannabis infused drinks coming to market in the states where it's legal, because it's still just sold at the dispensaries if it's available. That's as from what I've seen. And it would be interesting to see how that makes the transition to the mainstream. I don't know if there's any,
Didn't somebody on here tell us they tried, oh God, I don't know what it was. now I'm not sure, I'm looking around at all the names to see who it could have been, but someone said they had like a half of a drink and then they couldn't even. I don't know.
Yes.
It was definitely a
Sherman.
regular.
It was Sherman, but he's not
Who
here
was
yet.
it? Oh, that's right. It was Sherman. I was like, it's somebody that's not here.
Okay, yeah. Cause I'm like, I know it's right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember he said he had like half and he was like, ooh.
Yeah. Lightweight. Yeah.
Leave an office.
That
Let's see.
category, though, is a great complement to the dispensaries that can't have a liquor license, that want to do a restaurant with food that's infused with THC and all the things. So this
Right.
mixology mocktail situation is a great complement to that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think, Michael, you have a
Excellent
comment?
point that these dispensaries should be having a little bar service and a little restaurant.
Yeah, just coming in there, folks. Interesting just on the low alc, no alc thing. I put a couple of things in the chat there. There's an interesting article by a guy called, I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of a guy called David Luckman. He wrote a book called That Shit Will Never Sell. He's the guy who was the kind of innovator behind Bailey's and Tanqueray 10 and a whole lot of other brands. His book is fantastic. It's really worthwhile reading. But he has a interesting piece there on low alc, no alc products, and he's not a fan, right? But there's a couple of interesting opportunities. Some of you guys are in the wine space. So one thing that came up, I was actually listening to a podcast with him that he did on there's a podcast, the Philip Duff Show. So Philip Duff is an Irish guy who's based in New York, well-known kind of spirits consultant, etc. So they were talking about some of the kind of opportunities around no alc, low alc. So one that suggestion they had was kind of basically like a wine spritzer. So that's definitely, they would see that as a kind of an opportunity. So if those of you that are in wine, that could be a place to kind of look at, definitely as an option. Like what he was saying was something that if I don't like beer, that I can go to the pub and drink pints of, but basically that it's wine based as opposed to beer based. So that's an option. So, and he would sort of say could see potential for that. But it's an interesting twist on it, and kind of picking up on the kind of kickback to the pricing of some of the no alc, low alc products, particularly the ones that pretend to be spirits. They're charging a huge amount of money for flavored water, essentially. So that I suppose in straitened times, and a number of you kind of mentioned this, that there's pressure on the cost of things, that people, some of these brands will just disappear because the customers are not just going to have they don't have the disposable income to have the wool pulled over their eyes on some of these products. But the other important thing they brought up was the actual issue around the whole food safety issue with these items, because you have a bottle of no alc spirit, allegedly. So either it's full of preservative, or else once it's opened, it's potentially at risk of spoilage. And I think there's a massive issue there waiting to happen in terms of food safety, that basically these, because somebody gets a bottle of this stuff, assumes it will be the same as a bottle of gin or a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of rum, and they put it in their cupboard and leave it for 6 months and come back to it and have a drink, and suddenly they're poisoned,
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's not, you're not used to saying, you're used to, food products, juices, as soon as you open it, to put it in the refrigerator.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that with
particularly if it says spirit on the label, you're thinking this is a spirit and it's going to behave like a spirit. If it's a bottle of vermouth, if you've cop on, you will put it in the fridge, but it won't kill you if it sits in your cupboard for 6 months, because there is alcohol in it. But if it's a bottle of no alcohol spirit, then potentially anything could grow in there. So that's something I would be concerned about. Just and that kind of leads me on to the point about RTDs. So are all of those being tunnel pasteurized, or are they have the preservatives in them, or what's the protection?
Well, I would assume that if an RTD is a spirit base, that solves the problem. Because some of them
Not
are,
if it's at 5%.
that's true, like the spiked seltzers. are at
Yeah, I
5%.
mean, the thing with it is, if you have beer, there's if you have beer and it's not pasteurized, typically the ones that are not pasteurized, the craft beers or whatever, there's still some activity going on in there. Whereas or if you have a bottled beer that's not pasteurized, it's still got yeast active in there. Whereas if you have something there's nothing live in it, there's nothing that's kind of going to displace any bugs that get in there. So you have to be really careful about your filling and all of that. So just again, it's an issue that just I suppose a cautionary tale that I'd be very, very aware of. I mean, that was Guinness brought out this Guinness 0.0, and they had to recall it in the UK. So it was a huge launch for them, but they had to recall their canned product in the UK because they had micro issues in cans. So it even happens to big guys.
Yeah, I'm just Googling.
Yeah.
And so the article is most hard seltzer, with the exception of a few brands that are made by mixing actual seltzer with a spirit base, are made the same way beer is, by brewing and fermenting sugar water. So once boiled and cooled, this starchy water becomes an alcoholic base. They're basically saying, as with any brewed beverage, there's a freshness window. They say White Claw says it's up to a year. So I don't know that there's anything that's saying people can expect from it as much.
Yeah, well, I would imagine White Claw is pasteurized, it's tunnel pasteurized, but it's more the smaller ones that are at risk. And I suppose if any of you are looking into that or in that business, just to be cautious of it, that you're not that you make sure you're putting the stuff through a tunnel pasteurizer, because that will protect it.
One comment about that, under 21%, once it's open and needs to be refrigerated and it will still spoil, that includes vermouth as well. Over 21%, you're relatively safe. But I'd still be real careful. We've got a bunch of, because we have a lot of small breweries here in Colorado. It's pretty common to have people have issues with pasteurization and skunky beer from especially the smaller and newer players in the industry. We've had problems with RTD producers here in Colorado as well. Strangely using sterilized tap water and not appropriately pasteurizing, and have had recalls in their RTDs. I won't say who it was, but let's just say it happened.
So cautionary tale there from the two of us. What else was I going to say? So the other point, just when I'm on Pro Wine, any of you folks going to Pro Wine in Dusseldorf? It's coming up from the 19th to the 21st of March. So
We're participating, but I'm not there.
Right. Well, if any, I was going to say, if any of you were there, I would see you for an alt beer or some good Irish spirits. But anyway, not to worry.
I have a partner who's going, but I'm not going.
Right. Sorry, Stephen.
You still owe me good Irish spirits from Berlin.
Oh yeah. Well, they are we'll you never made it over to well yeah. Anyway, we'll pick that up again.
Don't go there.
We'll pick that one up again. Yeah. So yeah, that's I'll jump out there, let other people in.
All right. So Stephen, you talked a little bit about your the tax issues in the Colorado, which was very enlightening today, because it's so obvious. I never even thought about it.
Well, and it's not just Colorado. So there is a disparity at the national level that Discus is working on, and I believe ACSA has now stepped in to work with them. But there are, somewhere between 15 and 20 states that have far more egregious disparities and very little desire to rectify them. And it's an uphill battle to convince the powers that be and the rest of the alcohol community that this is harming their state's competitiveness in what is an incredibly fast growing category of alcohol beverage.
Mhm.
So we're seeing a lot of stuff in Colorado that is disturbing. Spirits is under a heavy threat as well, with a variety of governor mandated types of let's reevaluate the alcohol laws. Ballot issues being pushed by grocery, which benefit beer and wine, but not spirit. We just had a ballot issue passed that full strength beer and wine can go into all grocery and convenience. Spirit cannot. We have multiple municipalities looking at sin taxes on spirits. We have a packaging thing in Breckenridge, which is frightening, that will affect all but people using disposable packaging.
Mhm.
So restaurants, bars, it will affect the distilleries up there a little bit, but probably not as much as like food to go providers.
So it's a tax on packaging?
No,
Single-
it's a prohibit,
Oh, prohibition on single use, okay.
on single-use plastics.
Yeah,
We have a tax on alcohol being proposed by the city of Fort Collins. We have a senator that is getting ready to run a bill that will tax all manufacturers and distributors of alcohol to create a new government organization to deal with alcohol-related illness. And the proposed fee that he's talking about charging, he won't call it a tax, is actually more than our state excise tax.
Hmm.
So needless to say, Colorado's really lively right now. For the first time in years, Discus senior management is actually taking a look at what legislatively is going on in Colorado. So you all know I'm the elected board member for government affairs of the Colorado Distillers Guild. I'm also on the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States National Advisory Board, and I sit on their government affairs committee. And then I got my hands in a bunch of other things. But even in one meeting yesterday, for the first time ever, at least in the last 15 years, somebody from the President's Council, which is whatever their new name is, the alternative organization to Discus, actually had a lobbyist on the call. And I was shocked because I've never seen them show up. Diageo was on the call, Campari was on the call, Pernod Ricard was on the call. So everybody's now suddenly looking at Colorado because it's a legislative and tax and fee shit show right now.
Hmm.
So not talking about my business needs other than macro with the rest of the Colorado manufacturers, but it's an interesting time here in the state. And I think we're going to see more of that. Beer and wine are very aggressively trying to tilt the tables in their directions. WSWA has taken the gloves off on direct-to-consumer shipping and is starting to quote, outright lie, science that doesn't exist, people that don't exist. It's really kind of frightening. So there's just a lot going on right now from the government affairs standpoint.
wow, that's crazy.
So-
The single use thing, how is that working in New York? Every time I go to a little bodega, or they give me a bag that's like made out of industrial strength, reusable bag, and I'm still throwing it away. What am I gonna do with it? Carry this around? So it's a little crazy.
Yeah, they don't have straws, they don't have bags.
Yeah. Oh, but if they have
Single-serve
bags,
things are
they're
weird.
like reusable bags that, that are like, I don't want this. I'm not carrying this around. What's that?
Do they charge you for it?
No.
Because here in Colorado,
I went to a liquor store and I bought like 3 bottles of something, and he put them in this gray bag, like handles and everything. And I said, I don't need this. He goes, no, okay. I'm like, okay.
Was it branded?
No.
Because a lot of them are looking for those cloth, things like you would get at a trade show or something like that. They're looking for suppliers to do that.
Well, you go to the UK now and any grocery store, you pay for your bags at 10p a bag. The bags are branded, they're thick plastic like you're talking about, Michael. The flat that I rent when I'm in the UK, there's a Sainsbury Quick, which is sort of a mini mart next door. And the number of bright orange Sainsbury Quick bags that I have in my suitcase. And, I just try and remember every time to use them as laundry bags or something. Because I paid
The
attention.
New York ones, I don't think are plastic because they're trying to get away with like using plastic.
It may be biodegradable. There may be some other.
Well, I have to admit, I think I probably have more than 300 Whole Foods wine bags at home.
I
Because
do
every time I go
too.
buy 6, I get another one.
I have Trader Joe's, Aldi, every bag, probably like Publix.
That was an Irish started initiative. The plastic bag tax was first introduced in Ireland to kind of prevent littering. It was actually quite successful here. But obviously it doesn't always translate to different cultures that well, but it did actually limit the amount of, we used to call them witches' knickers here. Basically plastic bags would get caught in a tree, and that was but so we've eliminated those completely. But another initiative like the smoking ban in bars came from Ireland as well. So these kind of things keep getting thrown out. We currently have our public health authority are looking to get a cancer warning put on alcohol now. And this is kind of one of the things, I'm sure we can do this in Ireland. We look at the success of the plastic bag tax and the smoking ban. So anyway, that's a little bit of background to that.
Like we have the pregnancy warnings and all that.
Yeah, no, we have that as well. Yeah.
All right, well, any other topics of interest, or shall we just say sayonara?
I'm going to say happy St. Patrick's Day in advance to you all, and
Yes.
yeah, and make sure you've got a decent Irish whiskey in your glass on St. Patrick's Day. No green beer, please.
Hey, I do have one
no,
comment.
No
If you-
offensive cocktails either.
Yes.
No
Yes.
offensively named cocktails. I won't name one, but there's one that we take great offense to because it refers to the Troubles. So we're
Yes, and we all know which one that is, I believe. I have one comment, and that is, I'm back on the road looking for funding. So if you know of any investors, please give a yell. And then Michael, if you could give me a call at some point, I got some other business.
I will, and I have someone who is looking right now to buy both a tequila producer in Mexico as well as a Kentucky producer, but they're looking for a bargain.
Yeah, may not be a good fit, but I'm happy to talk to them.
Yeah,
know
no,
it's
but
border,
there's a actually, yes, I'll call you.
Okay, cool.
I have one very small question, and it's just something we recently ran into with giving away alcohol for like a contest or something. We get approached all the time for, hey, can you
Rich and I've
donate
gone over
product?
this so many times.
Mhm.
Just
I
to
know. Is there any updates or changes? Like if we wanted to, like, for example, the Broncos want to give away 2 bottles of Broncos blend, they just have to purchase it and then they can do whatever they want with it, but we can't give it to them.
You can't give free product to, if it's a nonprofit, you can. And we actually got LED here in Colorado to change that a few years ago. Litch and I talk about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Litch works for Breckenridge. He's
does.
a minority shareholder. He's been there from the beginning, and he kind of runs their in-market presence, I guess is the right way to describe Litch.
Yeah. He wears many hats.
He wears
But
many
she's
hats.
done a great job because their presence is pretty amazing. As I've
So,
commented here previously, every
well,
bar has this.
And we're literally good enough friends that I have 2 bottles of Breckenridge behind my computer. Plus, tell your master distiller or lead distiller that I will get back to him with feedback on his absinthe.
Okay, will do. I'll pass that along.
all sitting
Um,
behind my computer where they've been sitting for a month and a half. No, you're allowed to give away samples for marketing purposes. You're allowed to donate to I just run my desk, donate to nonprofits. As long as you maintain that wholesaler's license as a secondary license, it's limited to your products, which I believe you guys have.
mhm.
Because that was what we ended up coming to the compromise with LED on. It's $300. If you don't have it, you should.
Right.
You're not allowed to give any free goods to any retailer of any sort.
Yeah, I know that part, yeah.
But if it's marketing, you can give the bottles away.
Okay, yeah,
That's a marketing expense.
okay. So to the Broncos, we could give them 2 bottles and they could give them away.
Let me clarify this. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe so, yes.
Okay,
So we did a promotion with the Detroit Pistons, and they wanted to give away bottles of bourbon.
But you're in a control state and it's Michigan law.
Correct. Okay, so
Very
they had to buy, they had to buy them.
Very different. This is Colorado law.
Yeah.
Yeah, have Litch call me.
yeah, well, it's something I'm doing. Lich can call you, but maybe I'll call you.
Well, give me a call and if necessary, I can run it by somebody from LED real quick.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I
it's
can just pick up
confusing.
the phone and call Michelle. It's easy.
All right, everybody, thank you. We've had another productive conversation, connections on connections. Thank you all for participating, because that's what makes it work. Appreciate it, and until next time. What's that?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And our next one is April 7th, Friday, April 7th. We will get the word out as well as the recording of the session and everyone's contact information again.
I don't think that's a good, isn't that Good Friday? And most people are
Oh.
off.
It is Easter weekend, yeah.
I don't
It
think
is.
it's a day. I'm not, first of all, I won't be
Yep.
on the call, but I'm not doing, don't do it on
Yep.
my account. I'm just saying,
Yep.
I'm not, sure that's the best day to have it.
Yep, nope, we had not looked at that. So
What's the consensus? How many people would that be a conflict for?
Oh, I guess just me.
That's
I
it
don't
for-
know.
that's
I
it
don't
for
know.
me
I
as
don't think
well.
I'm gonna be in town, so I don't know.
That's it for me as well.
Michael, how do you look on the 14th?
Listen,
When-
if I'm the only
when
one
is
who has a
WSWA?
problem, or Michael and I, then
I'm gonna go right now.
we're the only people with 2, I mean, we got plans on. What?
I told
Let's
you,
see, because I've got, when is WSWA? Oh, that's the week before.
Yeah,
Okay. I guess we could do the 14th if it's an issue.
Oh, because we have folks that are not on here. So why don't we just push it?
Okay. 14th.
14th it is. We will get the word out. And again, with the follow-ups, and everybody have a great weekend. And
Okay,
happy
cool.
Saturday.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
all.
guys.